My rich best friend humiliated me for being poor at his birthday party, and when his parents found out, they went nuclear on him and embarrassed him back. But now he's angry and going absolutely trying to get revenge for ruining his reputation. At 13, my family was dead broke, so when I got stuck doing a group project with this kid who wouldn't shut up about his rich parents, I was sure he'd treat me like dirt. But plot twist, he actually liked me. Turns out making him laugh till he couldn't breathe was enough to make him want to be friends even after our project ended. The project was for our science class. We had to build a model of the solar system. Tyler brought in expensive materials his parents bought him, styrofoam balls in perfect sizes, special paints that glowed in the dark, and a motorized stand that would make the planets rotate. I was embarrassed because all I could contribute was cardboard, some old paint my mom had saved from when we repainted our kitchen 3 years ago, and wire hangers I'd straightened out. But Tyler didn't seem to mind. He actually thought my idea to use the wire hangers as orbits was genius, and kept complimenting my artistic skills when I painted Jupiter's swirling patterns. During those 2 weeks working on the project, Tyler would invite me to his house after school. His mom would pick us up in her gleaming SUV that smelled like leather and expensive perfume. I'd sink into those heated seats, trying not to touch anything too much, afraid I might somehow dirty the pristine interior. Tyler never seemed to notice my discomfort, chattering away about video games and movies the whole ride. Fast forward about 3 months, I thought we were really good friends, and he invited me to his birthday party in his mansion in 2 weeks' time. But there was a catch. He told me under no circumstance was I allowed to look poor or mention anything about how my family really was. I was to pretend to be rich. I should have seen the red flag right there, but I was 13 and desperate to fit in. When he told me this, we were sitting in his massive bedroom that was bigger than our entire apartment. He had a king-sized bed with a headboard that looked like it belonged in a castle, a desk with 3 different gaming monitors, and shelves lined with collectibles still in their original packaging. I was perched awkwardly on the edge of his gaming chair that probably cost more than all the furniture in my bedroom combined. "You can't come looking like, you know," he said, gesturing vaguely at my worn jeans and faded t-shirt. His eyes didn't meet mine as he said it, focusing instead on adjusting the action figure in his hands. "My other friends, they wouldn't understand. Just for one night, okay?" I nodded, my throat tight, telling myself it was just a game, like playing dress-up, just for one night. The 2 weeks leading up to his party were a nightmare. Tyler kept bugging me about buying new clothes and new shoes. I had to ask my mom to work double shifts at the diner and give me her tip money. She did, and we somehow scraped together enough to buy me one decent outfit from the mall. Not designer clothes like Tyler wanted, but at least it didn't scream thrift store. Every day at lunch, Tyler would quiz me about brands and vacations. "If someone asks where you went last summer, say Aspen, not the beach. Nobody cool goes to regular beaches," he instructed, pushing his untouched cafeteria food around his plate while I tried not to stare hungrily at it. "And remember, if they ask about your dad's job, he's in investment banking. Not specific enough for them to ask questions, but impressive enough they won't think twice." I spent hours practicing in front of our bathroom mirror, the only full-length mirror in our apartment. The glass had a crack running diagonally across the bottom corner, and the frame was plastic painted to look like wood. I'd stand there rehearsing casual shrugs and practiced laughs, trying to look like I belonged in Tyler's world. The night of the party, I felt like I was walking into a movie set. The mansion had actual columns and a circular driveway filled with cars that cost more than my mom made in 5 years. Inside, there were waiters carrying trays of fancy appetizers and a DJ. The driveway was lit with small lights embedded in the concrete, illuminating the path to the massive double doors like a runway. The front door was opened by an actual butler wearing white gloves who asked for my name and checked it against a list. The foyer ceiling soared 2 stories high with a chandelier that sparkled like a frozen waterfall. The marble floor gleamed so brightly I could almost see my reflection in it, making me suddenly self-conscious about my discount store shoes. Music pulsed from somewhere deeper in the house, the bass vibrating through the soles of my feet. The smell of flowers and expensive candles hung in the air, mixed with the aroma of food I couldn't identify. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud, reminding me I'd been too nervous to eat dinner before coming. Tyler introduced me around to his friends, and I managed to hold conversations about private school drama and vacation plans. For about an hour, I actually felt like I belonged there. These kids were laughing at my jokes and treating me like one of them. Tyler kept smiling at me from across the room like he was proud to have me there. I found myself standing in a circle of boys who all had the same carefully styled haircuts and expensive watches. They were discussing which ski resorts had the best slopes, and I nodded along, repeating facts I'd memorized from travel websites at the public library. A girl with perfectly straight blonde hair complimented my shirt, asking if it was from some designer I'd never heard of. I mumbled something about my personal shopper picking it out, a line I'd rehearsed, and she seemed satisfied. The appetizers circulating on silver trays looked like tiny works of art, things wrapped in pastry, skewers of colorful foods, miniature cups filled with soup. I carefully watched others before taking anything, mimicking how they delicately picked items up and ate them in small, controlled bites. When I accidentally dropped a napkin, I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but quickly scooped it up before anyone noticed. Then everything changed. We were all sitting in Tyler's game room when one of his friends started complaining about the scholarship kids at their private school. Tyler's eyes lit up, and he launched into this whole speech about how much he hated poor people trying to act like they belonged in his world. The game room was incredible. incredible. A pool table with red felt instead of green, arcade machines lining one wall, and a home theater setup with reclining leather seats facing a screen bigger than my bedroom wall. We were sprawled across couches and beanbags, surrounded by half-eaten pizza from a gourmet pizzeria and bottles of expensive sodas I'd never tasted before. I mean, seriously, Tyler said while gesturing dramatically. Grown-up adults who work at McDonald's and buy their clothes at thrift stores and try to pass it off as vintage. It's pathetic. The other kids were laughing and nodding along. My stomach started twisting into knots because everything Tyler was saying described my life exactly. My mom actually did work at McDonald's before getting the diner job, picking up night shifts after her day job until she collapsed from exhaustion. The memory of her hands, red and cracked from cleaning chemicals, flashed in my mind as Tyler continued his rant. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead, and the slice of pizza in my hand suddenly tasted like cardboard. The worst part, Tyler continued, is when they get all excited about getting into state schools because they can't afford real colleges. Like, congratulations, you're going to community college. He then smirked at me, knowing full well my dream was to go to a community college and make it out through there. He then looked directly at me while he said the next part. I honestly could never be friends with people like that. The room felt like it was spinning. Just last week, I'd excitedly shown Tyler a brochure for the local community college, pointing out their nursing program that offered night classes so students could work during the day. He'd nodded along, seemingly interested, asking questions about scholarship opportunities. Now those same details were ammunition for his mockery. I sat there frozen as Tyler kept going. He talked about how disgusting it was when poor families tried to shop at nice stores, how he got sick when people like them were around him, and how if he ever found out his friends were poor, he would shoot them with his dad's hunting rifle. I couldn't take it anymore and ran outside crying. The laughter followed me as I stumbled through the house, past confused waiters and party guests, my vision blurred by tears. I knocked into a table, sending something crashing to the floor, but couldn't stop to see what it was. My carefully practiced rich kid composure completely shattered as sobs tore from my throat. And that's when everything changed. Tyler's parents found me on their front steps and asked what was wrong. At first, I tried to protect Tyler and said it was nothing, but they kept asking with genuine concern. Mrs. Prescott crouched down beside me, her expensive dress pooling around her on the stone steps. She didn't seem concerned about getting it dirty as she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Her perfume smelled like jasmine and something else I couldn't name, subtle and elegant. Mr. Prescott stood behind her, his brow furrowed with worry, cell phone forgotten in his hand mid-call. Please tell us what happened, Mrs. Prescott said, her voice soft but insistent. You're clearly upset and we want to help. Her eyes were kind, nothing like Tyler's when he'd been mocking people like me. Mr. Prescott offered me his handkerchief, a real cloth one, not a tissue, and I took it hesitantly, embarrassed by my runny nose and tear-streaked face. Finally, I broke down and told them everything. How Tyler made me hide who I really was. How everything he just said inside described my actual life. I didn't know how they'd react, but what I didn't expect was unwavering support. Their faces went from confusion to absolute horror. Mrs. Prescott's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in shock. Mr. Prescott's face darkened, his jaw clenching so tight I could see a muscle twitching in his cheek. They exchanged a look I couldn't interpret, some silent communication passing between them. Tyler's dad immediately stormed inside and announced to everyone that the party was over due to his son's completely unacceptable behavior. The other kids stared at him in confusion, but he refused to elaborate and just kicked everyone out. He then pulled Tyler into his room to talk to him alone. I watched from the doorway as kids filed out, whispering among themselves, shooting curious glances my way. Some parents arrived to pick up their children, looking annoyed at the unexpected early end to the party. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to become invisible, the borrowed handkerchief clutched in my sweaty palm. Tyler's mom apologized to me in front of everyone, and after all the kids were out, she explained what happened to all the parents privately. They were split in half. Several of them thought what Tyler did was funny. They were the ones the mom cut off. But a few came up to me afterward and asked where my parents worked to see if they could pull some strings and get them better jobs. One mother with a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement knelt down to my eye level and asked gently about my mom's experience and skills. Another father in a suit that probably cost more than our rent pressed his business card into my hand, telling me to have my mom call him about an opening at his company. Their kindness made me cry all over again, but differently this time. I remember seeing Tyler come out crying, and after everyone left, his parents forced him to apologize to me. Tyler's apology was clearly forced, his eyes never meeting mine as he mumbled the words his parents had obviously made him say. His face was blotchy from crying, but there was something hard and cold behind his tears that made me shiver. When his parents weren't looking, his expression changed for just a second, a flash of hatred so intense it made my stomach drop. The ride home that night was suffocating. My mom picked me up in our hit-up Honda that protested with every turn, the muffler rattling like loose change. The shopping bag with my new outfit sat on my lap, the tissue paper inside rustling with each pothole we hit. I couldn't bring myself to speak, just stared out the window as streetlights blurred through my tears. My mom kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her eyes heavy with concern, but she didn't push. Rain had started to fall, creating streaks across the windows that mirrored the tears on my face. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, needing replacement but not in our budget. The heater worked only on the highest setting, blasting hot air that smelled faintly of burning dust. My new clothes felt like a costume in the the shopping bag, something that belonged to someone else entirely. When we finally pulled into our apartment complex, the security light flickering above our parking spot, I broke down and told her everything. Her face transformed as I spoke. First shock, then fury, then a deep sadness that made her look 10 years older. She wrapped her arms around me, the familiar scent of diner grease and drugstore perfume enveloping me as she promised I could stay home Monday if I needed to. But we both knew hiding would only make things worse. Our apartment building was old, with peeling paint and concrete walkways stained with years of rain and use. The elevator was perpetually out of order, so we climbed 4 flights of stairs in silence, my mom carrying my backpack while I clutched the shopping bag with the new clothes. Our apartment door stuck in the frame from humidity, requiring a firm shoulder push to open. Inside, the familiar smell of laundry detergent and the lingering aroma of the spaghetti we'd had for dinner the night before greeted us. That weekend stretched endlessly, each hour bringing me closer to what felt like my execution. I imagined all the ways Tyler might retaliate, spreading rumors, turning friends against me, or worse, actually following through on that hunting rifle threat. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I could barely eat, just pushed food around my plate while my mom pretended not to notice. I spent hours staring at the ceiling above my bed, counting the water stains and trying to predict what Monday would bring. The walls of our apartment were thin enough that I could hear our neighbor's television through them, the muffled sounds of a sitcom laugh track providing an ironic soundtrack to my anxiety. My mom tried to distract me with board games and my favorite movies, but I couldn't focus, my mind constantly replaying Tyler's words and imagining the worst possible scenarios for my return to school. Monday morning arrived with cruel inevitability. I wore my regular clothes, jeans with a small hole in the knee and a faded t-shirt that had been washed too many times. No point pretending anymore. The secret was out. My mom offered to drive me, but I took the bus, needing those extra minutes to prepare myself. Each stop brought me closer to school, my heart hammering harder with every mile. The familiar squeal of the bus brakes at each stop made my anxiety spike higher. The vinyl seats were cracked in places, the floor sticky with spilled drinks and muddy footprints. Other kids chatted and laughed around me, their conversations about weekend activities and homework assignments seeming impossibly normal compared to the dread building in my chest. I clutched my backpack strap so tightly my knuckles turned white, rehearsing responses to potential taunts in my head. The whispers started the moment I stepped through the front doors. Kids I barely knew stared and murmured behind cupped hands. In first period, the seat beside me remained conspicuously empty despite the crowded classroom. During passing period, someone accidentally knocked my books from my hands, papers scattering across the dirty linoleum while snickers echoed down the hall. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed incessantly, casting a harsh glow that seemed to highlight every thread in my worn clothing. The school smelled of floor cleaner, cafeteria food, and hundreds of bodies packed into 2 small spaces. Lockers slammed around me as I knelt to gather my scattered papers, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely grip them. A teacher walked by, glancing at the scene but continuing without comment, either not noticing or choosing to ignore what was happening. By lunchtime, I was completely isolated, the invisible barrier around me as effective as barbed wire. Tyler had been busy. He'd spread a twisted version of Saturday night, claiming I'd crashed his party pretending to be rich, then got caught stealing from his house. The story made no logical sense, but logic doesn't matter in middle school. Tyler was popular. I wasn't. His truth became everyone's truth. The cafeteria was a battlefield of social hierarchies, with clearly defined territories at different tables. I stood at the entrance, tray in hand, scanning for any friendly face or empty spot where I might be tolerated. The noise was deafening. Hundreds of conversations, chairs scraping against floor, the clatter of utensils against trays, the smell of overcooked vegetables and mystery meat hung in the air, mixing with the artificial fruit scent of cheap perfume and body spray that seemed to follow groups of girls. I sat alone at lunch, the cafeteria noise washing over me as I pushed mystery meat around my tray. Then suddenly, someone sat across from me. Megan, a quiet girl from my math class with wire-rimmed glasses and a constellation of freckles across her nose. She didn't mention the rumors, just asked if I'd finished the algebra homework. That small kindness nearly broke me. Megan's lunch was packed in a reusable container. Nothing fancy, but clearly homemade. She pushed half of her chocolate chip cookie toward me without comment, opening her math notebook as if sitting with the school pariah was the most normal thing in the world. Her glasses slipped down her nose as she leaned forward, and she absently pushed them back up with her index finger, a habitual gesture I would come to recognize in the weeks ahead. The week continued in much the same pattern. Tyler and his friends made gagging sounds whenever I walked past. Someone stuffed garbage in my backpack during gym. My locker was vandalized with the word thief in permanent marker. I reported it to a teacher who gave Tyler a half-hearted warning that did absolutely nothing. The marker was black and thick, the letters jagged and angry across the metal door. The janitor tried to remove it with industrial cleaner that left the paint discolored in a cloud around the still visible word. The chemical smell lingered for days, a constant reminder every time I needed to get my books. The inside of my backpack had to be scrubbed repeatedly to remove the banana peel and yogurt someone had stuffed inside. The zipper forever stained with a sticky residue that attracted dirt and lint. Friday brought escalation. Tyler cornered me after gym when the locker room had emptied, backing me against the cold metal lockers. His face inches from mine. He told me he would make sure I regretted ever stepping foot in his house. When I asked why he was doing this when he knew the truth, he just laughed, saying nobody would would believe trash like me over him. His breath smelled like expensive mint gum as he hissed that this was just the beginning. The locker room was damp and smelled of sweat, cheap deodorant, and the bleach used to clean the floors. The overhead lights flickered slightly, casting strange shadows across Tyler's face as he leaned in. I could feel the cold metal of the lockers pressing against my back through my thin t-shirt, the locks digging painfully into my shoulder blades. My gym clothes were balled up in my hands, still damp from the rushed shower I'd taken, now clutched like a shield between us. That night, I finally broke completely. Through heaving sobs, I told my mom everything. The rumors, the isolation, the threats. Her face hardened into something I'd never seen before. Jaw clenched so tight, I could see the muscles working beneath her skin. Without a word, she grabbed her phone and dialed Tyler's parents, her knuckles white around the receiver. I could hear Mrs. Prescott's shocked voice through the phone as my mom detailed the week's torments, her voice shaking not with fear, but with fury. Mrs. Prescott promised immediate action, her tone leaving no doubt she meant it. Our small kitchen table wobbled slightly as my mom leaned against it. The phone cord, we couldn't afford cordless, stretching across the room. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the background, the sound seeming to grow louder in the pauses between my mom's words. A single bulb lit our kitchen, casting harsh shadows across her face as she spoke, making her expression even more fierce. Outside our window, the neon sign from the convenience store across the street flashed intermittently, sending pulses of red light across our walls like a warning beacon. The weekend passed in anxious silence. I expected Monday to bring even worse retaliation from Tyler for involving his parents again. But when I arrived at school, Tyler wasn't there, or the next day, or the entire week. Rumors spread like wildfire. Boarding school, military academy, extended grounding. The harassment stopped almost immediately without Tyler there to orchestrate it. A few kids even approached me with awkward apologies, admitting they'd known Tyler's story didn't add up. The hallways seemed brighter somehow without the constant dread of running into Tyler. I could focus in class again, my hand shooting up to answer questions for the first time in weeks. Megan continued sitting with me at lunch, gradually joined by others who drifted to our table now that Tyler's influence had vanished. The cafeteria food even tasted better, though it was exactly the same mystery meat and overcooked vegetables as before. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Prescott called, inviting my mom and me to dinner at their home. My mom accepted before I could protest, her tone leaving no room for argument. That Saturday, we drove up the circular driveway again, my stomach clenching at the sight of those imposing columns. The Prescotts greeted us at the door, both looking exhausted but genuine. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. The mansion looked different in daylight, less intimidating but somehow sadder. Flower beds that had been hidden in darkness during the party now showed careful landscaping, with spring bulbs just beginning to emerge from the soil. The fountain in the center of the circular drive was running, water catching sunlight as it splashed down in crystalline streams. Mrs. Prescott wore casual clothes, expensive still, but not the formal wear from the party, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail that made her look younger and more approachable. Over a dinner featuring food I couldn't pronounce, they explained that after learning about Tyler's behavior at school, they'd realized this wasn't an isolated incident. They'd discovered a pattern of bullying stretching back years, always targeting kids from less affluent backgrounds. They'd sent Tyler to live with his uncle in another state, enrolling him in a school focused on community service and character development. Mr. Prescott admitted they'd spoiled Tyler, never teaching him the value of hard work or compassion. The dining room was smaller than I expected, intimate rather than formal. Family photos lined the sideboard, Tyler as a toddler, the Prescotts on vacation at a beach, school portraits showing Tyler's progression through the years. The table was set with china and crystal, but not ostentatiously so. Steam rose from dishes I couldn't identify, filling the room with aromas of herbs and spices I'd never encountered. Mrs. Prescott noticed my hesitation with the multiple forks and quietly demonstrated which to use first, her kindness making me feel helped rather than judged. Then came the unexpected. Mr. Prescott offered my mom a job managing one of his company's cafeterias, doubling her salary with benefits and regular hours. My mom tried refusing, saying she didn't want charity, but Mr. Prescott insisted it wasn't charity. He needed someone reliable and hardworking. As we were leaving, Mrs. Prescott handed me an envelope containing a card apologizing again for Tyler's behavior, a gift certificate for new clothes, and information about their family foundation's scholarship program. She told me they'd been impressed by my resilience and wanted to help me achieve my educational goals. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored paper with my name written in elegant cursive. The gift certificate was for an amount that made my eyes widen, enough to replace my entire wardrobe several times over. The scholarship information was printed on thick paper with an embossed letterhead, detailing a program that could potentially cover my entire college education, not just community college, but any university I could qualify for academically. Life transformed rapidly after that night. My mom started her new job the following week. We moved to a small but clean apartment closer to her workplace. I got clothes that actually fit and didn't have holes. At school, the whispers stopped, and gradually, I was included in group projects and lunch table conversations. The Prescotts checked in regularly, inviting us to monthly dinners. They rarely mentioned Tyler, just that he was working through things. I often wondered if he knew about their friendship with us and what he thought about it. Our new apartment had reliable hot water, a dishwasher that actually worked, and windows that sealed properly against the cold. The neighborhood had sidewalks lined with trees and a small park within walking distance. My mom's new schedule meant she was home for dinner every night. No more double shifts, leaving her exhausted and absent. We started cooking cooking together, trying recipes from a cookbook Mrs. Prescott had given us, laughing at our mistakes and celebrating our successes. 3 months later, Mrs. Prescott asked if I'd speak with Tyler on the phone. He was making progress, she said, learning about privilege and consequences. I reluctantly agreed. The call was awkward, Tyler's voice subdued and unfamiliar. He apologized without excuses, explaining how his parents had opened his eyes through volunteer work at homeless shelters and minimum wage jobs. I didn't immediately forgive him. The wounds were still raw, but I listened, which seemed important to both Tyler and his parents. I paced nervously around our living room during the call, the phone cord stretching as I moved. Tyler's voice sounded different, the arrogant edge gone, replaced by something quieter and more thoughtful. He spoke about working alongside people who lived paycheck to paycheck, how he'd never realized what that actually meant before. When he mentioned seeing a single mother crying because she couldn't afford both medicine and school supplies for her child, his voice cracked slightly. I couldn't tell if the change was genuine or performance, but I wanted to believe people could change. That summer, the Prescotts invited us to their lake house. I was nervous about seeing Tyler, but Mrs. Prescott assured me he wouldn't be there. They'd made the difficult decision to have him stay with his uncle permanently until graduation, trying to break his sense of entitlement before it became irreversible. Sitting on their dock watching the sunset, Mr. Prescott told me something profound, that sometimes you have to choose between being a good parent and being a popular one. They'd chosen the former, even if Tyler hated them for it now. My mom squeezed his hand in understanding. The lake house was rustic compared to their mansion, though still nicer than anywhere I'd ever stayed. It smelled of pine and cedar, with comfortable furniture designed for wet swimsuits and sandy feet. The dock extended into clear water that reflected the changing colors of the sky as the sun set. Dragonflies skimmed across the surface, creating tiny ripples that expanded in perfect circles. The distant call of loons echoed across the water, hauntingly beautiful in the growing twilight. The lake house weekend marked a turning point. For the first time, I had adults besides my mom who genuinely cared about my future. Mrs. Prescott took me shopping for school supplies, insisting on a proper backpack and calculator. Mr. Prescott taught me to fish off their dock with a patience my absent father had never shown. When school resumed in fall, things had shifted dramatically. Tyler was gone, but stories about him had reached mythic proportions. Military school, disownment, juvenile detention. I never corrected these rumors, partly because I didn't know the full truth myself, and partly because I was simply relieved to be left alone. The new backpack was sturdy and ergonomic, with padded straps that didn't dig into my shoulders like my old one. The calculator was the graphing kind required for advanced math classes, something I would have had to borrow or do without before. Mr. Prescott showed me how to bait a hook without flinching, how to cast without tangling the line, and most importantly, how to wait quietly, enjoying the stillness rather than growing impatient. We talked about everything and nothing during those fishing sessions. School subjects I enjoyed, books I'd read, dreams I'd been afraid to voice before. My mom's new job transformed our home life. Our refrigerator stayed consistently full. She no longer collapsed into exhausted silence each night. We could afford internet, allowing me to complete research projects without staying late at the library. Small luxuries that most took for granted felt miraculous to us. The constant background anxiety of unpaid bills and empty cupboards faded gradually, replaced by a stability I'd never known. My mom started taking classes toward an associate's degree, something she'd always wanted but never had time or money to pursue. Her hands, once cracked and red from cleaning chemicals, began to heal. She laughed more easily, the deep lines of worry around her eyes softening. We started a small tradition of Sunday morning pancakes, something we'd never had time for when she worked weekends. 2 months into the semester, I noticed something unsettling. A new student named Evan had joined Tyler's old friend group. Something about his calculated glances in the hallway made my skin prickle with recognition. Then came the notes in my locker, scraps of paper with charity case and gold digger scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting. I discarded them silently, not wanting to worry my mom when things were finally improving for her. The notes were folded into tiny squares, wedged through the vents of my locker door. The handwriting was jagged and pressed hard enough to leave indentations on the paper, revealing the anger behind the words. I developed a habit of checking my locker quickly between classes, disposing of the notes in different trash cans throughout the school to avoid anyone noticing a pattern. My hands would shake slightly each time I turned my combination, dreading what might be waiting inside. The situation escalated when someone created a fake social media profile using my name, posting pictures of our old apartment building with captions about trading favors for designer clothes. The whispers returned, forcing me to delete my legitimate accounts. The breaking point came when my backpack disappeared during gym, only to reappear in the cafeteria garbage with yogurt dumped inside, destroying my books and notes. The yogurt was strawberry, pink, and sticky, soaking through my notebook pages and textbooks. The smell lingered despite my best efforts to clean everything, a sickly sweet reminder of the incident for days afterward. I had to explain the damaged books to my teachers, feeling their skepticism as I carefully avoided mentioning bullying, claiming I'd accidentally spilled something. The replacement costs were an unexpected expense that made my mom's forehead crease with worry, though she never blamed me. I finally told my mom, who immediately called Mrs. Prescott. The next day, they accompanied me to the principal's office. Principal Warner seemed distinctly uncomfortable in Mrs. Prescott's presence, adjusting his tie repeatedly as we explained the situation. He made vague promises about looking into it, while suggesting I might be overly sensitive given my background. I watched Mrs. Prescott's expression harden frustration at his dismissive tone. She reminded him that her family foundation had funded the school's new computer lab, and she'd hate to think their contributions supported an administration that didn't take bullying seriously, especially when it targeted students from less privileged backgrounds. The principal's attitude transformed instantly. He assured us he would personally investigate and implement anti-bullying measures. As we left, Mrs. Prescott squeezed my shoulder, whispering that sometimes you had to speak people's language to get results. Principal Warner's office smelled of coffee and furniture polish, with walls covered in framed diplomas and certificates. His desk was massive, creating a deliberate barrier between himself and visitors. The chairs we sat in were intentionally lower than his, a power dynamic Mrs. Prescott disrupted by sitting perfectly straight and maintaining direct eye contact throughout the conversation. The principal's nameplate gleamed on his desk, positioned to be visible from the doorway, announcing his authority to everyone who entered. For several weeks, things improved. The fake profile disappeared. The notes stopped. I focused on my schoolwork and helping my mom adjust to her new responsibilities. Then, one Friday afternoon, I stayed late to complete a science project. The hallways were nearly empty as I packed up to leave. Footsteps echoed behind me, and before I could turn, someone shoved me hard against the lockers. My glasses flew off, skidding across the floor as I struggled to regain my balance. Through my blurred vision, I made out Evan's face, flanked by two of Tyler's former friends. Evan hissed that I thought I was special now, but his cousin Tyler had told him all about me. My blood froze as he confirmed they were related, and that Tyler had instructed him to ensure I didn't forget what happened to people who crossed his family. They didn't hit me, but their message was clear as they kicked my glasses down the hall, leaving me to search the floor half-blind and terrified. The empty school hallway amplified every sound: their footsteps, my ragged breathing, the metallic clatter of my glasses sliding across the floor tiles. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made it even harder to see without my glasses. The lockers were cold against my back, the metal hinges digging painfully into my spine where I'd been shoved. The school smelled different after hours, cleaning products more noticeable without hundreds of bodies and backpacks masking the scent, an emptiness that felt threatening rather than peaceful. I didn't tell my mom or the Prescotts, fearing what might happen if Tyler's parents discovered he was orchestrating revenge from afar. Would they cut him off completely? Despite everything, I didn't want to destroy a family. Instead, I became hypervigilant, avoiding isolation at school, eating lunch in the library where teachers were always present, leaving with groups of students. But Evan was patient. During a field trip to the Natural History Museum, I became separated from my group while searching for the bathroom. In an empty exhibit hall, Evan and his friends surrounded me. He shoved me against a display case, telling me Tyler said hello and that his parents were idiots for falling for my act. One boy twisted my arm painfully behind my back, while another whispered that Tyler was coming back soon. His parents were sending him to a special program, and upon completion, they'd let him return home. He was just telling them what they wanted to hear. Evan added that Tyler's texts about my mom and me were disturbing, how we were manipulating his parents, and how he had plans for when he returned. A security guard's appearance forced them to back off, pretending interest in the exhibits. I rejoined my class, shaking uncontrollably, but hiding my distress. The museum exhibit hall was dimly lit to protect the artifacts, making the boys' faces look sinister in the low light. The glass display case pressed cold and hard against my back, the edge digging into my shoulder blades. The prehistoric fossils behind the glass seemed to watch impassively, witnesses from millions of years ago to this very modern cruelty. The museum's climate control system hummed quietly in the background, maintaining perfect temperature and humidity for artifacts while I struggled to breathe through my panic. The boy twisting my arm smelled of too much cologne, the chemical scent making me slightly nauseous as he leaned close to deliver Tyler's threats. That night, sleep eluded me. What if Tyler was manipulating his parents? What if he returned and convinced them my mom and I were taking advantage? We'd lose everything: my mom's job, my school supplies, our newfound security. The next morning, exhaustion evident in the dark circles under my eyes and my non-existent appetite, my mom pressed until I confessed everything: the confrontations with Evan, the threats, Tyler's alleged return. She immediately called Mrs. Prescott, putting the phone on speaker. After a heavy silence, Mrs. Prescott sighed deeply, explaining that Tyler had indeed been contacting friends despite restrictions on his phone use. He was in a program that could eventually lead to his return home, but that decision was years away, not months. She promised to address the situation with Evan's parents immediately and asked us to come for dinner that evening to discuss matters in person. Our kitchen looked particularly small that morning, the walls closing in as my mom paced with the phone. Sunlight streamed through the window over the sink, illuminating dust particles floating in the air between us. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the silence following Mrs. Prescott's revelations. My untouched breakfast grew cold on the table, the cereal slowly turning soggy in the milk, a visual representation of my dissolving sense of security. The drive to the Prescott's mansion felt weighted with dread. What if this ended their support? What if they decided we weren't worth the complications? Mr. Prescott himself opened the door, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. In their living room, Mrs. Prescott sat with a folder of papers, her expression grave. She explained that Tyler's behavior wasn't new. There had been a previous incident they'd handled privately, mistaking it for typical teenage rebellion. Mr. Prescott added that psychologists now believed Tyler had serious issues with empathy and truthfulness, having manipulated his parents for years, playing the perfect son when convenient and behaving behaving cruelly when unsupervised. Mrs. Prescott admitted they'd been willfully blind, finding it easier than acknowledging their son's serious problems. My mom reached for Mrs. Prescott's hand, assuring her they were doing the right thing now. The Prescott's living room felt different than during previous visits. The elegant furniture and artwork unchanged, but the atmosphere heavier, more somber. A fire crackled in the fireplace despite the mild evening, casting flickering shadows across the room. Mrs. Prescott's folder lay on the coffee table between us, the papers inside representing difficult decisions and painful realizations. A family photo on the mantel showed Tyler at perhaps 10 years old, smiling broadly between his parents, a moment frozen in time before everything unraveled. Mr. Prescott announced 3 decisions. Tyler would not return home anytime soon, needing more intensive help than initially realized. Evan's parents, unaware of his actions, were sending him to live with his father in another state, and most surprisingly, they'd established legal protections for our future. Mrs. Prescott opened her folder, revealing documents establishing a trust fund for my education, community college, state university, whatever I chose, ensuring my future regardless of what happened between our families. They'd also created an employment contract for my mom with significant termination protections and severance provisions. My mom tried refusing, calling it excessive, but Mr. Prescott was adamant. They'd spent years throwing money at Tyler's problems instead of addressing them properly and wanted to use their resources for genuine good. The legal documents were thick stacks of paper filled with formal language, terms like irrevocable trust and beneficiary designation jumping out from the pages. Mr. Prescott explained each section carefully, his background in business evident in how he translated the complex legal terms into understandable concepts. The papers smelled new and official, the ink still fresh on some of the signatures. My mom's hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the employment contract, her eyes widening at the salary and benefits clearly spelled out in black and white. That evening transformed our relationship again. The Prescotts weren't just helping us, they were making us permanent fixtures in their lives. Mrs. Prescott mentored me academically. Mr. Prescott taught me to drive in his least expensive car. They included us in holidays and vacations. Tyler remained with his uncle, then transferred to a specialized boarding school. His parents visited monthly, but always returned emotionally drained, never sharing details, but clearly disappointed by the lack of progress. The driving lessons took place in a quiet subdivision with wide streets and minimal traffic. Mr. Prescott was endlessly patient, never raising his voice when I ground the gears or braked too suddenly. He taught me to check blind spots, parallel park, and change a tire, practical skills my own father should have taught me. Mrs. Prescott helped me prepare for standardized tests, reviewing flashcards and practice essays with the same attention she gave to her professional work. Their home gradually became a second home to us, a place where we were expected and welcomed rather than merely tolerated. Near the end of 9th grade, almost 18 months after Tyler's infamous birthday party, I came home to find my mom at our kitchen table, her expression unreadable as she showed me a text from Mrs. Prescott requesting our immediate presence. Something had happened with Tyler. The drive to their house was tense, my mom repeatedly assuring me that whatever had occurred wasn't my fault, though I couldn't help feeling responsible. Had my exposure of Tyler that night at his party set all this in motion? The text message glowed ominously on my mom's phone screen, the brief words revealing nothing but urgency. The drive felt longer than usual, traffic lights catching us at every intersection, as if deliberately delaying our arrival. The radio played softly in the background, neither of us reaching to change the station or adjust the volume, both lost in our own thoughts and worries. The familiar route to the Prescott's home seemed suddenly foreign, each turn bringing us closer to unknown news. The Prescotts sat in their formal living room holding hands when we arrived. Mrs. Prescott's eyes were red-rimmed but strangely calm, while Mr. Prescott looked aged beyond his years. Tyler had escaped from school 3 days earlier, stealing money from his roommate and a staff member's car, abandoning the vehicle near the state line with no trace of his whereabouts. My heart raced at the implications. Was he coming here? Coming for me? Mrs. Prescott, reading my expression, assured me they didn't believe he was heading here, knowing they'd cut off his financial access. Nevertheless, they'd hired security for both our homes as a precaution. The formal living room was rarely used during our regular visits, reserved for important occasions and serious conversations. Crystal decanters on the sideboard caught the light, sending small rainbows dancing across the walls. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence between sentences, marking the passing of time as we absorbed the shocking news. Mrs. Prescott's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white, though her voice remained steady as she explained the situation. For weeks afterward, I jumped at unexpected sounds. A security guard followed me to and from school in an unmarked car, another stationed near our apartment. The Prescotts insisted it was merely precautionary, but their concern was palpable. Then one evening during dinner at their home, Mr. Prescott's phone rang, his face drained of color as he listened, then informed his wife they'd found Tyler in Las Vegas, attempting to gamble with a fake ID, telling people he was 21 and that his parents had died in a car crash, leaving him millions. Mrs. Prescott asked if he was physically okay, to which Mr. Prescott confirmed he was, being held until they arranged transport back to the school. The school director suggested this might provide the wake-up call Tyler needed, facing real consequences for his actions. The security guard assigned to me was discreet, but obvious to anyone paying attention. A man in his 40s with a military haircut and alert eyes, always parked within sight of wherever I was. was. He never intruded, but was always present, a constant reminder of potential danger. At school, rumors spread about why I suddenly had a bodyguard, theories ranging from witness protection to celebrity parentage. The dinner where we received news of Tyler's capture was interrupted mid-bite, the fork of pasta suspended in air as Mr. Prescott answered his phone, the subsequent conversation casting a pall over the meal that remained largely uneaten afterward, but it didn't. 2 months later, Tyler escaped again, reaching California before being apprehended for shoplifting. Upon his return to school, he became increasingly defiant, refusing therapy and medication. The Prescotts reached their breaking point. During one Sunday dinner, Mrs. Prescott broke down crying, confessing they were considering more drastic measures, a wilderness therapy program, followed by a highly restrictive residential treatment center. Mr. Prescott explained they'd exhausted all expert recommendations, private therapists, medication, different schools, with nothing penetrating Tyler's resistance. My mom suggested they take time away to think clearly, having operated in crisis mode for nearly 2 years. The Prescotts planned a weekend at their mountain cabin, inviting us to stay at their house to care for their elderly dog and enjoy their amenities. Mrs. Prescott's breakdown was sudden and heartbreaking. One moment discussing dessert options, the next sobbing into her napkin, years of stress finally overwhelming her carefully maintained composure. Their elderly golden retriever, sensing her distress, placed his head in her lap, his roomy eyes looking up at her with concern. The dog was gray-muzzled and moved slowly, arthritis evident in his careful movements, but his loyalty was unwavering. Mr. Prescott explained their mountain cabin was remote, without cell service or internet, offering the complete disconnection they desperately needed to make clear-headed decisions about Tyler's future. That weekend felt surreal, sleeping in their guest rooms, swimming in their pool, watching movies on their enormous screen. My mom and I kept exchanging disbelieving glances, marveling at how our lives had transformed. Saturday night, we were watching a film when the security system chimed, indicating someone had entered the property. My mom paused the movie, concerned whether the Prescotts had returned early. Before we could speculate, glass shattered somewhere in the house. My mom pushed me toward the nearest bathroom, instructing me to lock myself inside and call 911 while she triggered the alarm manually. The guest room I'd been assigned was larger than my entire bedroom at home, with a private bathroom featuring marble countertops and a shower with multiple jets. The pool was heated to the perfect temperature, surrounded by comfortable loungers and potted plants that created private nooks for reading or sunbathing. The home theater had reclining leather seats with cup holders, a screen that covered an entire wall, and a sound system that made you feel like you were inside the movie. The security system's chime was deliberately subtle, a gentle musical tone rather than a harsh alarm, but unmistakable in the quiet house, instantly transforming our relaxed evening into high alert. With trembling hands, I called emergency services, whispering our situation to the dispatcher. As I provided the address, shouting erupted elsewhere in the house, followed by a crash and my mom's scream. I dropped the phone and ran out, heart threatening to explode from my chest. In the living room, my mom backed away from Tyler, who brandished a kitchen knife. He looked feral, hair unkempt, clothes filthy, eyes darting frantically around the room as he demanded to know his parents' whereabouts. My mom maintained remarkable composure, explaining they were at the cabin for the weekend. Tyler accused her of lying, gesturing toward the garage where their cars remained. He advanced toward her, and I couldn't stay hidden. I shouted for him to stop, drawing his attention to me. The bathroom I'd been hiding in had thick towels monogrammed with the Prescott family initial, fancy soaps shaped like seashells, and a phone mounted on the wall beside the toilet, a luxury I'd never seen before. The 911 dispatcher's voice continued from the dropped phone on the tile floor, tinny and distant as I ran toward my mom's scream. The living room was dimly lit, the movie still frozen on the massive screen, casting an eerie blue glow across the scene. Tyler's knife gleamed in that light, reflecting the paused image from the film as he waved it threateningly. His clothes were stained and torn, his once perfect hair matted and greasy, his eyes wild with a combination of fear and rage I'd never seen before. His face contorted with rage as he recognized me, spitting that I'd turned his parents against him and stolen his life. He lunged toward me, but my mom intercepted him, shielding me with her body while reasoning that police were already en route and he shouldn't worsen his situation. Something calculated flickered in Tyler's eyes as he lowered the knife slightly, claiming he only wanted to speak with his parents and needed money they supposedly owed him. I explained they were genuinely absent, but would return tomorrow, suggesting he could wait to speak with them then. Tyler seemed to consider this, the knife dropping to his side momentarily. Then the security alarm blared, and his expression hardened again, accusing us of trapping him. The security alarm was deafening, a piercing wail designed to disorient intruders and alert neighbors. The sound bounced off the high ceilings and hardwood floors, making it impossible to think clearly or hear each other without shouting. Tyler's momentary hesitation vanished with the alarm, replaced by cornered animal panic. His clothes smelled of sweat and something chemical, possibly alcohol or substances, the scent becoming more noticeable as he moved erratically around the room. The knife in his hand was from the Prescott's kitchen, a professional chef's knife with a wicked edge that caught the light with each movement. Before he could react further, security guards burst through the front door, followed by police officers with weapons drawn. Tyler spun around, still clutching the knife. Officers repeatedly commanded him to drop the weapon as my mom pulled me to the floor, covering me protectively. Time slowed until the knife clattered against the hardwood. Looking up, I saw Tyler face down, one officer securing his hands while he sobbed. His earlier bravado evaporated into childlike fear. The front door crashed open with such force it left a dent in the wall behind it. The security guards wore black uniforms with bulletproof vests, moving with practiced precision as they secured the room. Police officers followed with GNs drawn, their flashlights cutting through the dim room in blinding beams. The commands to drop the weapon were shouted in overlapping voices, creating a wall of sound that seemed to physically push against Tyler. When the knife finally fell, it hit the hardwood with a distinctive metallic ping that somehow cut through all other noise, marking the exact moment Tyler's resistance collapsed. The Prescotts returned immediately upon notification. They arrived as police were placing Tyler in a patrol car, Mrs. Prescott checking our well-being before briefly speaking with her son through the car window. Mr. Prescott remained with us, his face ashen as he apologized repeatedly. Later that night, after police had departed, the four of us sat in their kitchen drinking tea in heavy silence. Finally, Mr. Prescott announced their decision. Tyler needed more help than they could provide while maintaining everyone's safety. He would enter a secure residential treatment facility once legal issues from the break-in were resolved. Mrs. Prescott squeezed my hand, emphasizing that these developments changed nothing about their feelings toward my mom and me. We had become their chosen family. The patrol car's red and blue lights pulsed across the driveway, illuminating the scene in alternating colors as the Prescotts arrived. Mrs. Prescott ran from their car before it had fully stopped, her face a mask of worry as she rushed to check on us. Her brief conversation with Tyler through the patrol car window was too quiet to overhear, but her body language, rigid with tension, one hand pressed against the glass, told its own story. The kitchen where we gathered afterward was the heart of their home, less formal than other rooms, with copper pots hanging from a rack and children's artwork framed on the walls. The tea Mrs. Prescott served was herbal and soothing, steam rising from delicate cups that no one actually drank from as we processed the night's events. Driving home that night, emotionally drained, my mom shared Mrs. Prescott's private comment that meeting us had been their silver lining amid darkness, that helping us heal had helped them heal too. The Prescotts had lost a son but gained a different kind of family, and we, who had so little for so long, had gained not just financial security, but people who truly valued us when others, including their own son, had tried to convince us we were worthless. The car's headlights cut through the darkness as we drove home, illuminating the road ahead one section at a time, much like how our future was gradually becoming clearer. Streetlights passed overhead in rhythmic intervals, briefly lighting the interior of the car before returning us to shadow. My mom's hands were steady on the steering wheel despite everything we'd been through, her resilience visible in that simple act of guiding us safely home. The city looked different at night, buildings transformed into silhouettes against the sky, familiar landmarks taking on new dimensions in the darkness. On the third anniversary of Tyler's birthday party, Mrs. Prescott presented me with a small wrapped box after dinner. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with a single bridge charm, symbolizing that sometimes when bridges burn, new ones form. What happened with Tyler was tragic, she explained, but it brought us into their lives. She would always grieve her son's choices, but never regret the family they found because of them. My mom squeezed my hand under the table as I fought back tears. The gift box was small and wrapped in silver paper with a perfect bow, Mrs. Prescott's attention to detail evident even in this presentation. The bracelet inside nestled on a bed of white satin, the silver catching the light from the dining room chandelier. The bridge charm was intricately detailed, with tiny architectural elements visible upon close inspection. Mrs. Prescott fastened it around my wrist herself, her fingers gentle and sure as she worked the clasp, the simple gesture somehow more meaningful than the gift itself. 3 years earlier, I'd been a poor kid desperate to hide my identity, to fit in with someone who didn't deserve my friendship. Now I stood confident, supported, and valued for exactly who I was. Last month, I received college acceptance letters, not to community college as I'd once dreamed, but to prestigious universities offering full scholarships based on my academic performance. When I opened Stanford's letter with a full ride offer, the Prescotts cheered as enthusiastically as my mom. The Stanford acceptance package was thick and impressive, the university's emblem embossed in cardinal red on cream-colored paper. Opening it at the Prescotts' dining table had been my mom's idea, a way to share the moment with all the people who had supported my journey. The letter itself was formal and congratulatory, but the real emotion came from the people around me. My mom's eyes filling with tears of pride, Mrs. Prescott's spontaneous hug, Mr. Prescott's handshake that turned into an embrace. The kitchen counter quickly became covered with acceptance packages from other universities, creating a colorful display of options I never would have had without their support. Tyler remains in treatment, now in a transitional program, allowing greater independence. His parents visit regularly, reporting gradual improvement, more thoughtfulness, less entitlement, interest in studying psychology to better understand himself. I don't know if I'll ever see him again and feel comfortable with that possibility. Some chapters are better left closed. The Prescotts never pressure me to reconnect with Tyler, respecting the boundaries I've established. Their updates about him are factual and brief, shared only when relevant, never dominating our relationship. They've created separate spaces for these different parts of their lives, their relationship with their son and their relationship with us, maintaining both without forcing intersection. This balance demonstrates their respect for my experience and their understanding of the complex emotions involved. I sometimes sometimes reflect on that night at his birthday party, when he looked directly at me and declared he could never be friends with people like that. He was right, but not as he intended. People like me, who understand the value of hard work, who appreciate opportunities, who recognize character matters more than wealth. We're selective about our friendships too. The Prescotts taught me that true wealth isn't measured in mansions or designer clothes, but in having people who stand beside you, who recognize your potential when others don't, who help you become your best self. By that measure, I'm infinitely richer now than Tyler ever was. The bracelet with the bridge charm catches the light on my wrist as I write my college acceptance responses, a tangible reminder of how far I've come. My bedroom wall now displays a framed photo of my mom, the Prescotts, and me at my high school academic awards ceremony, all of us smiling with genuine pride. The frame sits beside my college acceptance letters, these physical symbols representing both my past journey and future path. The window beside my desk overlooks a neighborhood where children play safely on sidewalks, where trees provide shade in summer, where I've finally found not just a house, but a home. The journey from Tyler's birthday party to this moment spans more than just 3 years. It measures the distance between hiding who I was and celebrating who I've become.